Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/malicious compliance for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Casserole 422. Take you to court? Okay. This was many years ago, so I apologize if some of the details are incorrect. 'Twas the year of our Lord 2006. My big sister had just started driving on her own. My parents did, as most parents did at the time. They bought her the biggest pile of shit car they could find. Relatively reliable, but it was a mid-80s gold Geo Metro. Oh, I mean, hey, if it works, it works. It was a beater, rusty, dented and dinged, very ugly, and importantly for this story, one of the mirrors was duct taped on. One afternoon in the fading light, she was driving to our local Pizza Hut to pick up her paycheck. On that fateful day, as the sun was going down, someone in a big black Suburban type of vehicle backed into her front driver's side pretty hard. So hard, in fact, that the car was completely totaled. But luckily, my sister was fine. Both parties had insurance. They called the police to take an official report, and my parents started the hunt for a new car. Some time passes, and they get a letter from the Suburban's insurance agency asking for our insurance to cover the cost of the damage done to the Suburban. The Suburban driver was alleging that my sister had been speeding through the parking lot and was therefore at fault. This was news to them. They grilled my sister, who swore up and down in sideways that she was not speeding, and actually that she was going much slower than normal because as the sun was setting, it was hitting the windshield in such a way that made visibility difficult. After some digging, they found in the police report the sheriff's deputy had noted that the mirror that was duct taped on fell straight down. So not only had my sister not been speeding, but she was very nearly or completely stopped at the time of the accident. My parents' insurance sent a letter back stating that my sister had not been at fault for this accident, and they were willing to accept the total they had paid for the car several months earlier. A paltry sum of $350. The lady who hit my sister responded back that she would not be paying for anything, as she was very confident that she was not at fault, and told my parents that they would just have to take her to small claims court. My parents responded, "Bet," and did just that. In order to get all of the paperwork in line for small claims court, they had to take this shitty little Geo Metro to an auto body shop and get an estimation for how much it would cost to replace the panels that this lady had totaled. Well, a car that was old was difficult to find parts for, and so they were unable to find anything to replace the panels and the door. So they gave her a quote for how much it would be to repair those panels, as well as replace the tire and suspension bits that she messed up by backing into it. About $4,000. Just before the court, they did attempt to go to mediation with her to attempt to get her to just pay the $350 that they had initially bought the car for. Unfortunately, or fortunately, she was still convinced that she was not at fault. Long story short, my parents were awarded the full $4,000, as it was determined that the lady did not check behind her thoroughly enough before backing out of the parking spot. And that's how my parents made $3,000 on a $300 car. Ah, yes, the Geo Metro with a 0 to 60 time of roughly 14 seconds is speeding around the parking lot. For context, a base model Toyota Corolla 2025 does 0 to 60 in around 8 seconds. A BMW M340i can do 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. That's a car that you can speed around in a parking lot in, because you can pretty much hit the early 30s to late 50s in a parking lot in just a simple straightaway. You're not doing that in a Geo Metro. Ambitious exam 3858. All items on the floor are trash? Alright, have fun rooting through the dumpster. I'm a custodian for an office building. I clean bathrooms, take out trash, vacuum, etc. I clean in the morning before the office opens. When collecting trash, I'd occasionally find some loose papers under behind desks, beside the trash can, or otherwise on the floor. Since I'm not sure if these papers are trash that missed the can or important documents that fell on the floor by accident, I pick them up and put them on the corner of the nearest desk for the workers to either file them away or toss them. Better safe than sorry. However, the manager did not like this habit. She came in early one morning expressing disgust that trash is being placed on people's desks. Obviously, I never put actual trash like food wrappers or crumpled papers on desks. I explained my reasoning for my habit and expressed that I didn't want to risk tossing something important. My manager told me that everything on the floor is trash, and the workers aren't such immature slobs to drop important documents on the floor. I agreed and said I'd never do it again. Flash forward several weeks. My manager came in early again and expressed concerns because a filing cabinet had tipped over that day, and despite picking up the papers, they were still missing a few important documents. She asked if I'd seen them. I reminded her that since everything on the floor is trash, the documents were probably thrown away. She was irate, saying, "But this was an exception since a filing cabinet fell over." I asked her how I was supposed to know that when I'm not there during the day and was otherwise not informed to look out for these documents. That's when the situation dawned in this woman's eyes that she was her fault. She stumbled through some excuses before demanding I go to the dumpster and find the papers. I told her that the office was opening in 15 minutes and I still had work to do. She stormed off and said she'd start looking in the dumpster. While I cleaned, I knew I'd face her again before leaving. My car is parked by the dumpster, so I thought of what to say to her as the final nail in the coffin. Sure enough, when I finished my work and walked out, the manager and a few other workers who'd arrived were rooting through the dumpster. When the manager spotted me, she demanded I come help. I delivered my prepared line. "Ma'am, my job description is to take out the trash. Your job description is to ensure the safety and confidentiality of your client's files." I walked away to, in my head, a cartoon-esque villain scream of outraged failure from my manager. A few hours later, I got a text saying there will now be a special inbox shelf for me to place any papers found on the floor for the workers to go through. So, when I used to work at a desk job and I was also running the YouTube channel and going to university, I would show up at work around 3:30 a.m. or so I could get an early start in the day, get my hours in, get the projects that I needed to done before I went off to campus. And that meant that I was oftentimes interacting with the janitorial staff. In my office, she was a 24-year-old nursing student, and I had plenty of fun conversations with her and was nothing but nice to her. We both had similar music tastes, and I always made sure the coffee was brewed in the morning so she could get a cup before she started on her cleaning duties. And additionally, she started occasionally bringing me energy drinks when she would pass by the nearby gas station. Basically, what I'm saying is, janitorial staff, they're cool people. They just like to vibe and get their job done, and if you respect them, they'll respect the hell out of you. Blue Boy 714. Okay, I won't answer my old staff's questions and help them. Before I retired, I was a manager and programmer in a department located in the US. I would program, manage, assign projects, create timelines, answer questions that my staff had, etc. The company I worked for decided to consolidate the US and UK programming departments, and the new boss decided to have only managers in the UK oversee the programmers in the US. This meant that I was only supposed to keep programming. I had the most experience among all the US-UK programmers, and no longer needed to do the management side of things. But I still got the same pay as I used to. Due to a 6-hour time difference between the US and UK, that meant there were only 2 or 3 hours each day that we overlapped. This left the rest of the day for my old staff to either wait until the next day to ask their new boss or come to me, and I could answer immediately. The latter made more sense, so they could keep working. But eventually, the UK managers complained to the US-UK boss that the US staff wasn't coming to them for help, and were still coming to me, which the UK managers were having a conniption about. My boss told me to stop helping my old staff when they asked me questions and that they needed to ask their new manager, so it was time for malicious compliance. I went back to only programming, and when my old staff came and asked me questions, usually in the afternoons US time since the UK was done for the day, I told them I was told to no longer help them and they should ask their new UK manager the next day or send their UK boss an email with their question. I told them it was time for malicious compliance, since the US programmers knew exactly what would happen. So my old team started deluging their UK bosses with more questions, problems, etc., and then had to wait until the next day or 2 to get an answer. Within 2 weeks, the US team was missing deadlines, etc., and the UK managers had to answer for why their team was missing deadlines. After a couple more weeks, my boss and the UK managers came to the realization that due to the 6-hour time difference, there should be a manager in the US, which is exactly what I told them weeks ago. Finally, my boss asked me if I would like to be a manager again, and I told her I was happy just programming and didn't need the other work. They ended up giving me a raise in order to get me to go back to managing the US programmers. The only reason or explanation I can find, not that it's a valid reason or explanation, is that the bosses for some reason had some kind of bias towards the UK team and decided, you know what, that office halfway across the world, those will be managers now. And the US, they'll be the programmers. I'm left wondering if it has something to do with labor laws or something along those lines, and maybe there's some kind of loophole or workaround where UK managers or people in, project managing positions have different kind of labor responsibilities or rights and may not necessarily be a part of a union or something. Meanwhile, in the US, bit more wiggle room. Just a theory or question. If anyone lives in the UK who might be able to confirm that theory, I'd really love some additional insight. I could also potentially see this as the plan being along the lines of the managers who are in the UK, they wake up, they get their main responsibilities done, and they end their day hosting a meeting with the US team about what they need done for when they arrive the next day. The US team then has all their meetings in the morning, and then they work for the rest of the day without any kind of interruption on meetings or any kind of additional surprises that might take them away from their work. I could see that as being the initial idea to help efficiency, but the problem is that you still need someone on staff in that time zone to aid and help with additional problems that might pop up that only management can answer, as they learned. Also, good on OP holding strong until they offered him a raise before he took back his prior responsibilities. Bit of an oopsie-whoopsie on their part. This is actually cross-posted from r/fuck HOA. Only one front lawn decoration allowed? Okay, you got it. One of my many HOA stories when I regrettably was a member for the longest 2 years of my life was regarding decorations. All of our homes had a porch and rules regarding the front of house decorations. The rules and regulations said you could only have one decoration. Fine. I had no desire for any decorations at all in my front lawn. We did put 2 nice chairs on our porch to use on pleasant evenings with a sunset potential. We received a notice regarding our violation of having 2 decorations in front of our house, and the rules and regulations only allowed 1, and we had 24 hours to comply. Alrighty then. I removed both chairs from the porch. I searched for hours online for the most obnoxious decoration I could find, because the rules and regulations made absolutely no mention of what the decoration could or could not be, only that you could only have 1 item. I ended up with an at least 7-foot-tall blow-up sphere with an obnoxious, naked mermaid-like thing floating inside of it, flapping like one of those windman devices at a car dealer. I also posted a small sign stating, "Surveillance camera in operation. Smile," to curb any vandalism ideas. The HOA board of directors went absolutely nuts. I received no less than 6 letters in 2 days about how inappropriate, vile, and other various adjectives my decoration was, and that I was obligated to remove it. I responded with a certified return receipt letter with the appropriate section of the rules and regulations highlighted, and invited them to return mail with the exact language that my decoration was in violation of, and failure to do so with continuing violation notices would result in legal action on my part against all the board of directors members. This went on for about a month. And finally, my lawyer buddy sent them a threatening notice on their letterhead stating that depositions and full financial disclosures from each and every member would be demanded for discovery purposes in my damages lawsuit unless I receive an acknowledgement of their errors and a former apology. They waffled for about a week and then caved. Got a written apology published in the HOA newsletter signed by all the board of directors members. The next HOA meeting resulted in a rules change that porches were excluded from the decorations restrictions, and that all lawn decorations needed to be smaller than 4 feet in height. Many of the homeowners came to thank me for my resistance and results. Like I said, moved after 2 years from my job and never considered an HOA since. Every realtor we worked with, that was absolute no way rule 1. So unfortunately, as time progresses, it's extremely difficult to find a home that is not governed by an HOA doctrine. However, the best way to know if an HOA is going to be a problem or not, talk to the neighbors, see what they say. The best HOA is one you never notice. I pay $60 a month. HOA, they don't send out notices. They don't govern how many porch chairs you can have. But do you know what they do? They maintain all of the grass and decorative trees. They maintain the mailboxes. They do trash service. I've never seen a pothole in my neighborhood last for more than a week. And they're actually doing stuff to help the community out. Hell, they even include a gym membership as part of the HOA fee. They're not just hoarding the money, they're reinvesting it. Which is super cool for them to be doing this on just $60 a month. That's a good HOA, and it's why you should definitely, if you're looking to move into a new area, whether it's renting or buying, talk to your neighbors or future neighbors about the HOA and see what they say. Because it is a damn dice roll if you're going to get one that actually does what they're supposed to be doing or is just straight out of the 1950s with their rules and regulations. Job vent throw. HR are there to protect the company, not their employees. I've been struggling with my mental health for many years. Up till a few months ago, I was able to keep up at work even through extreme client pressure. Then, I started begging for help because I was struggling a lot. They promised to move me to a different team with less pressure, but kept moving the goalposts, telling me that they couldn't find a replacement due to client requirements. Early this morning, they ambushed me with a meeting with our HR director to give me two options. Either I get fired after a disciplinary hearing, or go on disability. I've been begging for disability for months, so naturally, I was really happy to go with option 2, as I have good income insurance through the company. Then, the HR head bitch demanded that I get the doctor's paperwork done today. I'd already been in contact with the doctor, and she couldn't get it done because she'd just returned from leave and had a huge backlog. The HR bitch demanded that I go to the doctor's office to get it done today. I was feeling utterly malicious when I complied, even though it meant a 2-hour drive with the distance and traffic. I got there and managed to chat to my doctor for 2 minutes in between appointments, and she requested permission to be rude to the HR bitch, and I told her to go for it. I don't know what she said in that email, but the HR bitch was suddenly very reasonable. Now I have a full week to get the paperwork done. I'm happy. The HR bitch is the wife of the CEO, and the company is about to take a huge hit because the client has found alternatives. So it's going to hugely hit their bank accounts. It gives me a very happy, fuzzy feeling. I gave years of loyal service, and they're going to get their karma very soon, even if my malicious compliance is a drop in the bucket. So as of this year, a new term actually entered my lexicon. It's not super new, but it's popping up more and more, and I was only made aware of it maybe 4 or 5 months ago. A lot of HR departments are slowly being phased out or entirely replaced. And can you guess what human resource management is being replaced with? Human capital management, HCM. I'm not kidding either. Look it up. The name alone is already dystopian, but if you look at Workday.com, what is HRM versus HCM? Literally in the Google search, not the AI, like the part that's, being highlighted underneath the link. While encompassing all of HRM's functions, HCM goes further by taking a more holistic approach to managing employees and development. Oracle defines the difference as of July 29, 2025 as HRM focuses on operational efficiency, while HCM drives strategic workforce development. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because this is something that was additionally brought up in the comments by Woolly Mammoth. That's how their name is spelled. I worked in HR for years, started when it was personnel. Originally, we were the link between staff and management to be fair to all. When my team was having to be renamed Human Capital Management, I couldn't get out fast enough. It breaks my heart at what the job I love has descended into. This comment reminded me of the shit that I was seeing a few months ago, and I thought that it was just kind of some tech bro strategy thing, but no. This is becoming a common plague. Never thought I'd see the day where HR somehow becomes even more evil. Hey, how can we improve HR? Oh, I know. We'll call it one of the most evil conglomerate names possible. Human Capital Management. I really just need to do a personal deep dive into this and just see what the hell it's all about, because every single article that I read on it just comes across as just malicious corporate speak for, you're not a person, you're capital, and our job is to make you as efficient as possible. Gold AU 2025. No more drugs in the workplace? Okay. My pet peeve is poorly written policy. If you're going to go to the effort of writing the rules, you may as well do it properly and not get the intern to do it. My wife came home one day and showed me a printout of her company's new workplace fitness for work policy that had been sent to all employees to sign in return. My wife, being my wife, decided to run it past me before she signed because I am, well, me. It was at most an amateurish document that was ultimately a waste of ink and trees, but did have a little bit to say about drugs in the workplace, which was essentially, do not come to the work under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and do not bring drugs or alcohol to work. I told her not to sign until they, at the very least, define what drugs were. Were they including Tylenol, antibiotics, Ritalin, or just the illegal ones and recreational pharmaceuticals? Fast forward a couple of days, version 2 of the document is presented. They fleshed out the drugs policy a little, basically using the dictionary definition, something along the lines of a non-prescription substance which has a psychological or mood-altering effect when ingested or otherwise introduced in the body. Substance is a pretty bold term. That includes anything from NyQuil to caffeine to essential oils. I mean, even smoking, technically. Okay. Time for malicious compliance. She signed and presented it to HR the next day and went about her work. During the morning, there were increasing amounts of confusion and frustrated loud voices in the office. Apparently, it took only an hour before zero work was being done and there was a crowd of workers around the break room. The manager eventually zeroed in on my wife, apparently the only one who wasn't looking confused, and asked if she had anything to do with stealing all the coffee in the break room. She admitted it was her and pointed out the new fitness for work policy which prohibited the consumption of mood-altering substances in the workplace. He tried to argue that it was just coffee, but she pointed out that it was definitely mood-altering substance, as per company policy, and as such was not allowed to be on the premise without a prescription. She'd made her point. She retrieved the coffee she'd stashed in the storeroom, the office mood was altered, and the company actually commissioned a functional fitness for work policy based upon the published government guidelines. Any federally illegal non-prescription drugs and alcohol? Because that would have been the shoo-in, because if it was a state like Colorado or California, then you don't have to worry about saying illegal drugs or alcohol, because then you could have to deal with them coming in with, marijuana or something along those lines, but adding federally illegal? Well, that covers all your bases there, and you don't have to worry about that. And you don't end up banning caffeine from the office. Sailing spark. Won't give me the card to get fuel? Enjoy the towing bill. I was just reminded of something that happened to me back in the early 90s. I was managing a warehouse for a furniture company. We were busy enough to keep a small 12-foot box truck and a pickup running around delivering all day. Part of my job was also deliveries. So even though I was warehouse manager, I did not have access to the fuel credit card. It was kept locked up in the boss's desk. This particular day, the truck was down to about 1/8 of a tank, something you should never do with a diesel. So I asked for the card to fill it up to make a delivery. The boss would ordinarily not have a problem with this, but he was out that day, and I had to deal with the head salesman, who decided that 1/8 of a tank was perfectly adequate to make this delivery. I could fill it up when I got back. So I make the delivery, and on the way back, the truck starts running out of fuel. It would die, and I would restart, and we could make it a mile, and it would die again. I get into the station, and it dies as we coast in. Call the salesman. He huffs and puffs, and finally sends somebody out with the card about an hour later. We fill it up, and she won't start. We ran her so low, we pulled air, and the whole system needs to be bled. So, truck gets towed to repair place and bled. They put in a new filter just to be sure. It's out of commission for 2 days, so we have to rent a truck. So all told, we missed all the deliveries for the rest of that day. Had to pay to have the truck towed and repaired and had to rent a truck, all because the head salesman had to be a dick and not want to give me the card. He got a serious chewing out over that, and never again did he give anybody any trouble about handing over the card. I wish I could say everything was roses over that, but he was always a dick and would find new ways to be a dick to us, but never with the fuel card after that. If you ever find yourself, in a position where you're requesting something, as an example, the fuel card for a diesel engine, because you know that if it doesn't get fuel, it's going to cause problems and damages later, and the request for the fuel card gets rejected, the simplest and scariest response that you can give them is, "Can I get it in writing that you declined the usage of the fuel card real quick?" Because at that point in time, it should click in that person's head of, why would this need to be in writing? What am I missing here? Because if they also just assume that they're in the right and just sign off on it, well, congratulations. If the thing you were fearing would happen that could cause a lot of problems happens, you now have the source in writing. This also goes the other way too. If you're doing something or telling someone to do something, and they ask you if you can get that in writing, you might want to have a deeper conversation of what you're asking for. Aeon Finance. Report everything that happens on these files, or else. Okay, then I will. Okay, I will get this right this time. 10 years ago, I worked under a manager who could best be described as old school old battle axe. It was an HR office. I do not work in HR anymore, and this is probably why. I was an intern starting a white-collar HR corporate job after 10 years of blue-collar work. I was excited to be in a climate-controlled office. I dreamed for years for this, and put myself through university by my bootstrap. I would do anything for air-conditioned office. I just broke my back a year prior and had a difficult time finishing my final year. She was known across the office for being impossible to please and for running through staff faster than the copier toner. Nobody lasted more than a year, I was told. From my first day, I was on her radar. I make occasional typing mistakes because of medication I was on that affects my short-term memory. I always ran spell check and proofed my work carefully, but she treated every minor error like a personal failure. She would scold me for the smallest things. Once she gave me an hour-long lecture about professionalism because I wore a blue shirt instead of a white one. I wore a sweater to a client meeting because their thermostat was broken and it was negative 20 degrees outside. I got shouted at by my supervisor for wearing this sweater harder than I did on any work site. Every day felt like inhaling glass shards. Then came the instruction that broke the camel's back. She told me I needed to deliver a daily oral report on every client file I managed. These weren't short updates. She expected me to know every number, every email, every call from memory, word for word, what was said. If I even got one word out of the transcript off, I was not fit to be there. She said, quote, "From the moment the sun rises on this office to the moment it sets, you are to report everything that happens in these reports." She knew I had a memory-related disability from a past concussion. She knew it would overwhelm me. So I decided to take her words literally. That night I opened Excel and began logging everything, every keystroke. I wrote it all down, even practiced my delivery so I could recite it perfectly. The next morning, when she called me into her office, I began. Quote, "Walked from my car to the building, opened the office door with my right hand, moderate pressure, entered the building, greeted the receptionist, made a coffee in the Keurig for 25 seconds, sat at my desk, adjusted my chair, started computer, opened Excel, began typing reports, ensuring keystroke sound remained within acceptable volume to avoid disturbing senior management arriving 45 minutes after 9 a.m. I continued like that for almost the entire hour, uninterrupted. She tried to interrupt, but I reminded her gently that I was reporting everything that happens. When it was over, she just stared at me. A week later, HR called me in. Yes, HR does have its own HR. I explained the situation exactly as it happened, that I was following her directive word for word. I had detailed documentation. By this time, I wrote down everything that happened in that office. They agreed it wasn't sustainable. Within a month, I was transferred to a new department. I was laid off 3 months later because that boss quit, but I got a good reference. A fun comment thread from Cramerica. It always baffles me that companies would rather keep the problematic employees instead of taking a step back and wondering if insane turnover for a specific position working with a specific person was Maybe detrimental to the company. User Spectacular Tricks comments. I've come to believe that it's better for them to pretend there's nothing wrong and avoid taking blame or responsibility, and eject the newer member of staff who likely has minimal job security. I once saw a formal dispute where an independent HR contractor came in and interviewed all staff, and we all talked candidly, as our names would be omitted from the final report, about a toxic senior colleague. It was a whitewash. The victim was paid to leave with an NDA, and the toxic person stayed another 2.5 years until a change of management swept the old guard away. The other part too is just the, cost of financials. You would need to essentially train and groom someone to be taking over that senior staff position for the person who has the high turnover rate. That's a lot of time and money, and kind of takes away from the operational efficiency of the company. Additionally, if you are removing senior staff, chances are you're going to have to give them some kind of, what's the word they sometimes use? Can't think of it off the top of my head, but basically a departure package for them leaving the company, where it's not you're not being fired, you're just departing from the company, or whatever word they use. It's a fancy one. Pretty much senior execs, they have it good. They kind of have a weird fucked up version of tenure that they get to cling on to, and there's more strings attached with cutting them loose than someone who's a new hire who's being abused by them. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSups. Use code ODDS at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code ODDS directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Pear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup, and you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code ODDS at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.